All right, so now we are going to try to do some flint tube, frozen flint tube servicing. And now I do recommend that at all times when operating power tools that one be as sober as possible. Moving along. We have plenty of these lighters that I just talked about that have frozen flint tubes. I mean, that's going to be your main thing that you encounter when you have like a lighter that's been sitting there for decades and you don't remove the flint. As I've seen from many repair shops and collectors, if you're not going to be using your lighter, please remove the flint because after a few years it will start expanding, be difficult to remove, and possibly even destroy your flint tube. I've seen this with at least one lighter that I've encountered. Now, for example, we're going to take one of these that just moves really freely. That's really not a good sign unless you didn't have the flint screw and flint spring in there, which it does. So I'm going to take a coin, in this case a dime, a penny a lot of the time works really well. I just have a dime out here because sometimes there's smaller lighters and the dime works fine. And we're going to get that to the point where I can use my fingers. I know it's not exactly the closest to the camera, but you know, I took the screw that was there and a dime, you know, and they're even usually grooved in such a way that it's kind of obvious that they want you to use a coin and not a screwdriver. They don't want you to force it down too much. Because I have seen that as a problem as well, where especially with the fuel screw, it'll be much too tight, and in which case I've actually felt silly purchasing such a screwdriver as this. I mean, it doesn't need to be this long, but I did want one that was so thick that was, what is this, 3/8 of an inch. It's almost a ½ inch, and it's already helped me with a couple of fill screws on a couple table lighters that otherwise I could not find anything that would unjam it, especially once it starts becoming stripped. But anyway, back to the flint tubes. Screws right there. Yeah, still moves up and down. No flint came out, so I already have my trusty rotary tool with good old 3 by 32nd inch if you're using standard, which sucks. I know you should use metric, but whatever. It works fine. That's pretty much about as large as you can go, and you usually want to go at that point unless you have really stuck flint. Then you can go a little bit smaller, you know, like for mine I go like 5/64. I don't think I've ever really used the 1/16 inch, but 3/32, about as tight into the collet as I can go. It's really not inserted all the way. Let's see if that's gonna work, because I really only have a couple millimeters to work with. Like, hopefully that'll be enough. If not, I do have this foot-long aircraft drill in 3/32 inch as well. I mean, you got to be careful with this thing, because if you like put it in there even all the way to the into the collet and tighten it as much as possible, if it's not inside of a shaft, or you know, I'm not an aircraft specialist, I don't exactly know how they meant to use these things, it'll wiggle around a lot. So really you only operate this at low speeds inside of, you know, a long shaft like a table lighter. I bought it originally for my Ronson Octet because, you know, it justified such a purchase, and it actually allowed me to free the flint tube in there. I could have possibly gone in like right set up. Oh yeah, you see it right here, huh? But like, I don't know, like it's difficult, and I decided to go in this way, so it worked. All right, let's see what we can do. I mean, you know, generally the idea when they tell you, I did read the owner's manual for the rotary tool, you wouldn't be pressing a whole lot because the operation of the drill bit itself is supposed to do what it's supposed to do. But in this case, I mean, you're really just depending on the vibration and agitation of something. Flint or, you know, ferrocerious iron. It's ferrocerium and steel mixed in a certain percentage, I believe, is something along the lines of 70-30. Can have a hardness that is higher than brass. So in that sense, you know, what you're doing is going to be difficult. Like, the way that adds up is basically that you can possibly be drilling through your device instead of the flint, especially if you have the curved flint tubes that you often encounter with Ronson. I believe the standards have it. Yep, and the Evans. Whirlwinds, pretty up and down, but there's an issue with that as well. That's the only one I have where the flint tube actually did crack, and now it won't accept a flint because there's too much room between the housing and the file wheel. I might have even done that when I drilled the flint out. I don't know. It's kind of an odd thing to encounter because it's, you know, the Imperial is supposed to be a luxury line of Ronson, and it is nice in many ways, but to me that was odd that the flint tube had a very thin extension beyond the main housing, and that's what caused it to crack, because otherwise I really haven't seen it. The reason I've stopped drilling too is because as I have encountered and feared, in this case it is very difficult, and you know, with much time and patience, or maybe just even using a paper clip and scraping away, as I've seen many people do, especially with Zippos, because they tend to be a lot easier. Maybe they're not left as alone as long, or you know, it just has a little bit more of a I think they actually have a wider tube, but you know, in this case I'm getting little small bits of black out here. You know, I don't know if you can see that. I think so, and that's okay. But I expected to get more of a pile like this, where especially if it's a light gray, and in that case, that's going to be a sign where you have. Well, oops. In that case, that's a lot easier. Just usually, you know, it falls out. Light gray. The dark gray, not so good. And sometimes I suspect it might even be the file wheel itself, but you know, in this case, it's obviously not getting to that point. You can always tell just by like inserting the paper clip or the drill bit without any like additional force and trying to operate the ignition system. If it's still, you know, freely turning like that, but it's not encountering any force, obviously, you know, the paper clip or whatever object you're shoving in there isn't reaching there, and therefore if you try to insert another flint, it's not going to get there either because there's something jamming it, which is obviously the old flint. See if I can demonstrate to you though. Alright, let's try this one. You know what, I should probably put that flint screw back in before I lose it. Where'd it go? Oh, there it is. Alright. So we're taking this one out, same way we did it last time. Shake it a little bit, nothing came out, still running freely. And we're just going to screw the previous flint screw / flint spring down. You know, you can really get it there like decently with your fingers if you're not too scared to smush it down a little bit. If you want to, you can tighten it with the coin. Again, I don't recommend anything more than a coin, and in this case, it's fine. You know, just stand up straight. I didn't need to use anything else. Don't abuse your lighter, please. And let's try to drill this out a little bit. Ah, yes. See, in this case, I was too eager to demonstrate and forgot what I just said a minute ago, where I am trying to drill on a standard Ronson lighter, which has a curved flint tube, in which case, honestly, I've found at this point it's easiest just to take it apart top down. I'll explain that in another video. Use these little things, that are pretty much like dental tools. So, this was a great demonstration of how frustrating it can be to drill out a flint tube from the bottom up. Although it's not obviously, it's honestly often the most easiest procedure, and they can't even work with a paper clip. So, once I have that, I will show you how easy it can be. I guess I'll title this video "The Possible Frustrations of Drilling Out the Flint Tube."